voters are looking at the age-old question, how old is too old to be president or even run for president? Trump, 78, I think 3 years younger than President Biden, who was getting all the flack at the beginning, and 19 years older than Kamala Harris. What are voters saying about Trump's age now?
All right, so the age issue is one that was working for Donald Trump earlier on in this campaign when his opponent was Joe Biden. Why? Too old to be president. Look at this. 78% of voters said in May that Joe Biden was too old to be president. But now the age issue is working against Donald Trump. Why? Because Kamala Harris is now the Democratic nominee. Look at this. Just 11% of likely voters say Kamala Harris is too old to be president. Now, if we come on to the other side of the board, look at that difference with Donald Trump. Look at this now. 58% of likely voters say Donald Trump is too old to be president. Now, that's up a little bit from May when it was 53%, but that 53% compared to 78% looked pretty gosh darn good. But now that 58% compared to that 11% for Kamala Harris, very bad news for Donald Trump. The messaging that Donald Trump and his campaign have been putting forward earlier on this campaign has been flipped upside down.
She's only 59, but okay.
You could get 11% to agree on anything. 11% of people believe the moon landing was faked.
Okay, there you go. Is it just about the age, or is this about the message, the change that this might bring in?
Yeah, all right. So you know what? We talk about age, but I think age is also a stand-in for change, and this is a change election. Look at this. Political or economic system in this country needs at least major change. Look at this. 2/3 of likely voters in the key battleground states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin believe that, in fact, the political and economic system in this country needs at least major change. Just 33% believe that it needs minor or no change. So the key nugget in this campaign is to be the candidate of change. If you are the candidate of change, you will win.
And who is leading on that front, the candidate of change?
Right, exactly. The age issue is working against Donald Trump. The change issue is now working against Donald Trump. We'll bring the right kind of change. Again, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, among likely voters. Look at this. Kamala Harris at 51%. Close by is Donald Trump at 47%. What I will note, Sarah, is these numbers look identical, basically, to what we see in the horse race, which was Harris ahead by 4 points. And you're seeing that right here on We'll Bring the Right Kind of Change. Harris ahead, again, by 4 points. So all of a sudden in this campaign, a campaign that has been about age and been about change, it was working for Donald Trump, and now it is working against him, and that is why Kamala Harris has all this momentum.
Very interesting. Harry Enton, thank you so much. Economy, of course, the biggest issue for voters. Harris is expected to release her first major economic plan. Axios is saying something really interesting about what she is going to do. And a big part of the Harris plan is to, as they put it, unapologetically change some of her more liberal positions and say that her White House experience has changed her mind. Ashley, what do you make of this? And can she do this successfully? Because, of course, Republicans are already saying this is a flip-flop. She's flip-flopping.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear that she's going to be rolling out her economic policies. It's been less than a month since she's been at the top of the ticket and really wanted to kick the tires on some of the issues that she knows Americans and voters really care about. I think she most certainly, look, the things I believed in 2016, most are true, but there are some things because of lived experience that over 8 years, I've changed my mind on. And I think that that is the courage of a leader to say, okay, maybe I didn't have that exactly right, but I'm going to adjust it. Or the country is different now than it was pre-COVID. I want to adjust some topics. So the vice president has a great opportunity with the bus tour that Eva just mentioned, going through Pennsylvania, a really important state, and talk about her election. But also she'll have those 4 days of the convention. And you won't just hear her talk about it in her speech, but I would imagine all of her surrogates, all the big headliners that are going to be during the convention, also teasing out some of the policies that the vice president stands on, whether they're different from her original position or not.
Essie, I want to ask you about Donald Trump's comments to Elon Musk. There's a lot of conversation around this, partly because of how the unions are responding. He sort of suggested that striking workers should be summarily fired, or at least was praising Elon Musk for summarily firing workers that may strike. We've now seen the United Auto Workers president come out and say he's suing over that. And we've now seen another head of a huge union saying this is economic terrorism for firing workers for organizing, striking. This is the same person who was at the RNC. How do you see this playing out?
Not well. I mean, this was a sloppy interview in that it didn't seem like Trump had any sort of idea of what he wanted to gain from it, other than sitting down with a friendly audience, two billionaires in sort of a, let's say, our grievances interview. So stuff like this, delighting in firing striking workers, just kind of came out. And the timing couldn't be worse, Sarah. JD Vance today is in Michigan speaking at a family owned truck company in the state where UAW is headquartered and a state which employs the most auto workers of any in the union. And also, by the way, a swing state that they'll need to win. So the sloppiness of the, Trump 2.0 campaign keeps hitting these ugly roadblocks everywhere it goes because Trump can't stay on message.
I want to ask you, Ashley, about a couple of things. One, you've got Harris, who in 2019 talked about, closing some of the things on the border, decriminalizing really illegal immigration, the migrant crisis that was happening at the time. Donald Trump is responding to some of this. He went on Univision, which is a Spanish language television that is highly popular, and he said this about immigration.
Yeah, we have people coming into our country from all over the world, not just from South America. Everyone thinks South America. It's really from all over the world. They're coming from Africa, from the Middle East, from Asia. We're being attacked. It's a new form of crime in the U.S. It's called migrant crime. And it's caused because of Harris, Kamala, Harris. Nobody knows her last name. It's Harris. Everyone thinks of her as Kamala. So it's Kamala Harris.
I'm curious what you made of that, because there is an issue here in New York, people talking about some of the incidents that have happened with crime. What do you make of his response, and whether or not you think Kamala Harris should be changing her tact?
Well, we do know her last name. It is Harris, and her first name is Kamala, as you pronounced correctly, Sarah, but she continues to intentionally mispronounce, or maybe just not smart enough to remember how to say her name. Nonetheless, look, we know immigration is an important issue, and it is something that the Democrats are going to have to address. But we also know border crossings are down under the Biden-Harris administration, lower than they were when Trump left office. We also know that there was a bipartisan bill that, but for Donald Trump, would have been signed to deal with some of these issues. But I want to address something else, is that I'm not sure if you showed the picture, but Donald Trump recently released a meme that had pictures of African immigrants, Black African immigrants, in this country. And he
Allison,
does this
hold on
as
one
a type
second.
of
Let's put that up while you're talking about it. This is what he put out here. Take a look at that picture. It really gives you a sense of where his head is at. Talk about that, his campaign and him pushing that out.
Now, it's not that immigration is not an important issue, but it's the way that Donald Trump talks about it. He talks about them being S-hole countries, or he talks about them being immigrants being rapists and murderers. And it's othering. It's trying to make voters and Americans feel scared of immigrants coming to our country, when in reality, most of the folks who are in America are because they have an immigrant story, their families coming from Europe. And so Donald Trump has a tactic right now that is not surprising, because it's a part of his tactic, but he's doing these things with racial undertones and saying, like, in a Kamala Harris presidency, all these Black immigrants and African immigrants and Haitian immigrants are going to come into your country, and do you want that? And you should be afraid. And so it doesn't appear that scare tactics really work in elections, but it is right out of the Trump playbook. And I would hope that their campaign would behave better. If you want to talk about the issues, great, but using imagery to try and invoke fear is pretty ruthless politics.
Essie, does it work? Because we see a lot of ads that do just exactly what Allison is saying, use scare tactics.
I wish it didn't, but fear works real well, actually, as a motivator. And that's on both sides, have sort of fear-mongered traditionally and historically. But I've always said there's a good way and a bad way to say anything. And there are good ways to talk about immigration, the migrant crisis, crime in our cities. This isn't one of them. But let me just add a note to this. It's also what the Trump campaign is not talking about. There's some real low-lying fruit, low-hanging fruit over on the Harris-Walz campaign that they're just ignoring. Minnesota, for example, Tim Walz's state, has a no-week restriction on abortion. That places it well outside where a majority of Americans are. Minnesota also has one of the highest income taxes of any state in the union. Go after that. Can we have a riff or a meme on that once in a while? But they just seem to want to stay with litigating Harris's race, calling out Walz's military service record, calling her dumb and stupid and mispronouncing her name. This is not a campaign. That's a crisis of confidence. That's not knowing where to go or what to do.
Ashley Cupp joining the chorus of Republicans trying to get Trump to change tact. Ashley, Allison, thank you so much, both of you, for coming on this morning.